Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar today. Our focus topic is showing you how to manage costs in Microsoft Project. My name is Sarah Howard, and I'm with a Microsoft Gold partner called PROJILITY. We've been implementing Microsoft project and portfolio management solutions for over 16 years now for large enterprises. So that includes everything from engineering, construction, IT, and new product development. People tend to get a hold of us when they can't easily explain what's going on across all of their projects. They don't know what resources are working on what work, and they have a hard time getting consistent reports and metrics to make project-based decisions. At PROJILITY, we offer services and solutions in 3 core areas, the first being deployment and consulting services, which is our core business where we provide professional services for successfully planning and implementing Microsoft project and portfolio management, including Microsoft's Project Online, integrating PPM with line of business applications, and delivering strategic portfolio management solutions to support top-level management planning. We also have a growing business intelligence practice that leverages best-in-class solutions such as Microsoft's Power BI. At PROJILITY, we also offer a set of pre-built software solutions and accelerators based upon 16 years of experience, including a set of Hammerhead products that provide improved access to your cloud PPM data, accelerate access to visual reports and dashboards using Power BI, and connecting data between your PPM system and Azure DevOps, Teams, Microsoft Planner, and Active Directory to improve visibility, insight, and control over your work, people, and projects. Finally, PROJILITY provides post-implementation support services, including expert care, which is designed to assist your PMO with gaining on-demand expertise on the solution supported. We also offer training for your end users and administrators, and we have an e-learning offering that can improve consistency and adoption for users of your project management tools. We do have a set of upcoming webinars covering topics ranging from managing risks on your projects with Microsoft Project and to building a solid work breakdown structure to manage your projects. All webinars will start at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can register for one or multiple events through the Eventbrite link provided or by searching Eventbrite PROJILITY in your browser. So we hope you can join us for these upcoming sessions, which were designed based upon your feedback over the last 6 months. And if you missed the PROJILITY Virtual Project Conference back in October, you can now watch it online. It's broken into 3 sessions, the first being clients sharing their best practices for deployment. PROJILITY speaks on considerations when comparing Project for the Web and Project Online. We also have a Microsoft expert speaking on the direction of the products. So you can visit the link here, which takes you to the YouTube playlist where the videos are posted. All videos from this and previous series are available on our best practice playlist on YouTube, which is listed on this page. We have topics ranging from managing your digital transformation program using PPM technologies to integrating PPM with agile and line of business applications. So feel free to subscribe and access this library at any time and share it with your colleagues. So with that, I am going to hand it off to Rob Hirschman, who is a partner at PROJILITY, who will be going through our content today. Rob, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everyone, for joining. A lot of the requests we get are, how do I manage my costs and my dollars in Microsoft Project? So what we wanted to do today is go through a project's life cycle and talk about the different tools that could be leveraged to manage costs, go through some of those core concepts, talk about how Project, extending into Project Online, extending into reporting can help you manage cost and get visibility on those costs. Talk through some of the reporting and strategic planning options, because obviously one of the reasons you want costs there is so you can do forward planning, not just see what you spent, but also see how much you have left to spend and how you're going to allocate those funds through the life of different projects, programs, and portfolios. Finally, we will wrap up with a discussion around good practices for how you can plan and deploy cost management within your project management environment. Answer some questions towards the end. If you do have any questions, if you just want to log them in the IM or the Q&A manager, we'll take those towards the end. Let's talk a little about the different stages around financial management as it relates to projects. And there really are 3 stages. If you think about kind of the early wave planning, where you're thinking about making certain investments, you have different goals, you have different metrics set up, and you're thinking about spinning those off into different projects, you're going to think at a high level, how much am I going to spend on each project? So you're thinking kind of high level planning. Then when you get into the actual detailed planning, that's when you're going to start breaking your costs out by different types of resources, by cost bases, by things like CapEx and OpEx, and how you're going to be spending your money. So the planning happens first. Then you move into a tracking phase where you're actually delivering on your projects, where you want to track and manage the funds as you're spending those on the different efforts that you have going on, roll those up and be able to not only report on those, but forecast forward how much more money am I going to need to complete the projects, tasks, and activities I have. Finally, you're going to want to do reporting, and this goes across the whole life cycle, but you're always going to want to have reporting on the planning, tracking of your financials as it relates to your projects, programs, and investments. And if we think about it, as you move into a centralized project management environment, there's lots of different processes you're adopting. You've got everything from your intake and demand management upfront to your project lifecycle and your governance, to your resource management, to the overall portfolio selection, to your scheduling, and financial management plays a role across this entire life cycle. So unless you've decided to completely divorce cost management from project management, you never need to see what you're spending on your projects and your people. You're going to need to think about how you're going to incorporate this into your life cycle. So let's talk about, as we start the planning process, what are some of the different components you can use in Microsoft Project to support planning of your costs? So Microsoft Project, from a planning perspective, can help an organization manage and effectively track different financial elements within your projects. We look at different kinds of resources, different kinds of costs. We have different resources we're going to be leveraging, and there are really two key metrics or methods we're going to be leveraging to do this. The first of those is what we call schedule-based costing, and this is where we're actually going to use the Microsoft Project's core schedule to drive a lot of our cost forecasts. There are different kinds of resources we're going to be leveraging across our different schedules. The first of those are human resources, which are actual people. We're going to attribute a certain hourly rate to these people, assign them to certain work, and then project is going to help us roll up that cost from the bottom up. So we think about schedule-based costing. We have people. We also have what we call budget resources in Microsoft Project, and these are often called fixed costs. This is going to help a project manager or some kind of a planning manager record any kind of fixed expenses you have on your projects. Things like equipment, materials, travel, training, contracted costs. We want to forecast that at a very high level. The third kind of resource we're going to leverage is something called a material resource. And a material resource is going to represent something physical, a thing that's not human or a budget. We're going to have hardware and software and maybe cement if we're in a construction environment that can be used to forecast our usage of our materials at a detailed task level. The next kind of resource is what we call a generic resource. And a generic resource is a role. That is something we're going to use to forecast different types of resources we're going to need upfront in our planning process. This may be things like, hey, we're going to need 5 business analysts or 3 developers or 5 project managers on the incoming requests we have for projects. We come up with a loaded rate, like $50 an hour that you'll see here. We multiply that out by the forecasted number of hours, and then we can actually see what our forecasted cost is based on the demand of different kinds of resources we have. Generic resources are really great because they do a good job of supporting any upfront rolling wave budgeting and planning if you have a project schedule with the right level of detail and you're able to resource load that schedule in a certain way. So what we can do during the planning phase is we can use schedule-based costing to come up with a bottoms-up estimate on our project. The key here is every resource you're going to have on a project within a schedule can have different kinds of rates, multiple billing rates, effective dates on those. You can dynamically calculate the costs based off the amount of work, and resources can be tied to things like cost centers. So we can use what we call schedule-based costing if we have some basic discipline around building schedules using Microsoft Project. A lot of organizations, though, want to do more t-shirt sizing, and they want to do more what we call project summary costing. So this is where we have a couple of different options, where we're going to use a tool like a Project Online or a centralized project management platform, and we can leverage different kind of add-ins to that in different ways. When we want to do summary level costing as a second method, we're going to capture forecasted costs at a project level or potentially a higher level than that, maybe a program level, have it trickle down to a project level. And within this kind of forecasting approach, we're going to have estimated total costs, maybe fixed yearly costs. We're going to look at a 1-, 2-, and 3-year forecasted budget for not only the deployment of a project, but the maintenance, management, and support of it. And we have an approved budget that we have going against this as well. Additionally, we may capture this information through a series of web-based forms, a spreadsheet analogy, something like Excel. The data may actually reside in a financial system or a tool like a Cognos, which actually does a lot of our financial forecasting and planning. It can be done manually or automated, so you definitely want to take a look at that. But the key here is that you can do top-level project costing and detailed bottoms-up schedule-based costing. You can combine those if you want. It takes a little more rigor and a little more effort, but you really want to decide what's most important, top level, bottom level, or both, and ideally you want to bring those two together. So top level can be very useful for what we call t-shirt sizing. As we're entering a fiscal year, all the requests come in and we want a high-level budget on each one. Now we need to know where that budget came from, so it's not just a swag, there's some detail behind it, so we can do some high-level schedule-based costing, but then we want to roll that up to a top level. And bottoms up is really, really effective when we understand the scope of the projects, when we've done the homework and we know how long things are going to take, how many resources we're going to need at a high level role-wise, and then what the actual effort is involved. What we can do also, if we do schedule-based, is we can leverage some templates. We can go back to past historical projects we've delivered successfully or not so successfully, look at the resources we use, look at the costs on those resources, look at the actual performance on that from a schedule and cost and work perspective, and use that as a basis for our planning. So what we can do is we can really combine the best of both worlds. We have to have some good discipline around scheduling. We have to have a method for our top-down planning. That's really important. When we start looking beyond the planning and we're actually now into execution, which is the second phase, once the project has begun, we're going to baseline our project schedule. We're going to baseline our overall budget and our costs. Now we have 4 pieces of information we're typically going to track on our projects, programs, and portfolios. The first of those is going to be our baseline cost, and that's what we've agreed upon within our budget with our stakeholders, and this is what we plan to spend. Second element is our actual cost, and this is what we've spent to date. We may have had a $50,000 budget, but we've spent $20,000 of the 50 to date, and here's what our remaining work is. So we can also look at our forecasted cost, which is our current spend plan to complete the work that we have within a project or across the portfolio. And then we're going to look on the fourth element, which is the remaining cost. What's left to spend, and can we hit our targets based on what we have our estimate to complete? And that's where we're going to use some of the metrics that may be built in or the tools built in, like estimates to complete and estimate at completion that are built into a tool like Project that help forecasting and reforecasting become a lot easier. So if we have some basic scheduling discipline, tracking and managing and forecasting becomes really, really a lot easier than if we're trying to swag it out and use spreadsheets. And Project's going to do a lot of these calculations. If you look in Project, there's something called a cost variance, and that's going to be generated when we look at the baseline cost minus the actual cost, and are we over or above where we need to be from a cost variance perspective. And then we've got a remaining cost, and Project is going to do a good job of calculating this consistently across every project. These are pre-built fields that are in Project, assuming we have the data in there. So we look at our forecasted cost minus our actual, and that's going to come up with our remaining cost. And these are some of the things we're going to look at as we're tracking our projects that we're going to teach our project managers some discipline around so they can keep that information up to date and start to forecast that out. Additionally, a lot of organizations that do the top down and then marry that with the bottoms up, they set up what we call project level enterprise cost fields, like actual total cost, actual year one costs against the forecast, which is what we had in the previous slides. So we can look at that and say, here's where we are and here's where we should have been at a top level. This is often happens and it's updated through one of really 3 or 4 mechanisms, either through project managers plugging those numbers in from the financial system, which often happens, which is a lot of work, via capturing that in an add-on app you can have built into Project Online, or you can actually integrate the data in from your system like an ERP, an SAP system, or your accounting system to pull that in either, and we'll talk about how you can do that from a reporting perspective into your schedules, into an app, or into a database. So there's lots of different options here. Really depends on what your end state is and what some of the tools in your environment are. Additionally, as we're looking at tracking, we can capture our actual costs within a schedule, and there's a couple different methods for doing that within a Microsoft project schedule. We can use in Project Online timesheets. And what timesheets are going to do is those are going to be the actuals coming from your team members, where you're going to capture the actual hours a resource or a person has worked against different types of activities. Project work, non-project activity, that's going to generate a cost action on the back end. So if Jim was assigned 40 hours at $50 an hour, and then he actually did 20 hours that work, the actual cost is going to be 20 times the $50 an hour. So we're going to generate actual costs based on the actuals coming from timesheets. It can come from, if the organization doesn't have integrated timesheets into your PPM system, the project manager plugging it in, sitting in the status meeting, getting the updates from the team member, plugging that into the schedule, looking at how much has been done, how much is remaining, and Project's going to automatically calculate this on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and then you can get snapshots of that. The third method, as I mentioned before, is integration. And this is one of the popular ways, reasons why a lot of people integrate with another system and their project management system, because you often have actual costs somewhere else. What we want to do is we bring our actual costs from our time and expense or our financial system into Project at a task level or at a project level. And to do it at a task level, you have to capture actuals at a task level, means your timesheet in your ERP system needs to marry up to the schedule detail, which often isn't the case. Most ERP systems track time at a project level. So pulling that over, it doesn't necessarily give you the detail on the tasks below it. That can be a bit of a challenge. We'll talk about some workarounds around that. So the good thing about Project is it can be work, and within Project, you can also categorize your activities as CapEx and OpEx. So you can start to see, are people spending more of their time on operation expenses versus capitalized? You can take those tasks out from user's timesheet and say, Jim spent 40 hours this week on all CapEx activities. Next week it's 2020. And then you can actually use those reports, that detail behind it, to generate information that may go into your financial system for forecasting. We have a lot of organizations that do that because typically your project management system is going to have more detail on the work and the performance than your financial system, which is going to have more detail on the dollars part of it. Often project managers can start using tools if they're actually capturing at least high-level costs in their schedules. They can use earned value management, or EVM, to control any changes, to analyze things like performance, to look at your estimated completion, your baseline cost of work scheduled, your actual cost of work scheduled, and look at the actual cost of work remaining. You can start to manage expectations. Hey, we're 20% of the way through the project. Problem is we've spent 30% of the money and we're only 15% of the work has been done. And then that can forecast out using earned value when you're going to finish and how much work and time it's going to take and dollars it's going to take to finish. That's really the benefit of having a schedule-based plan that actually has costs and resources loaded, but oftentimes it's hard to get to that level of detail, and that's why earned value is so difficult to have accurate. But when we start to think about integrating, we can integrate data from our project management system with our financial system and batch that in real time or in a overnight or a weekly basis, and that can help us with our labor forecasting and our cost forecasting as well as our reporting. It's a really good idea if you do need to have cost management to start thinking about what is our financial system, what's the level of detail we have, and how can I best integrate this data. And you also want to review whether it makes sense to integrate the data directly into your project management system or leverage what we call a PPM data warehouse approach, which actually puts a data reporting layer on top of your project management system. So you can pull data from your ERP system, you can pull data from your PPM system and go this route for reporting and let each system do what it wants to do and rationalize it at a reporting level. That's become a lot more popular because if I just take data from ERP and dump it into project's going to do all kinds of forecasts and calculations that I may not want to have happen. So I have better control over the financials application process when I go into a reporting environment. Finally, when we look at tracking, there's other information we may want to capture and track beyond just the cost. We may want to look at things like non-labor costs, different kinds of expenses. Those are things that are a little harder to put into your project schedule. Things like contractor labor costs. So maybe we have contractors that are doing all of our development work, and we want to pull that in to see what are we spending from the contractors versus what are our internal costs. Typically that's not information that's going to be in a project schedule. We want to start to capture benefits. And this is something a lot of organizations, especially the ones that have moved more towards agile, are looking to do. You may be looking at things like, hey, I know we spent $100,000 on this project. How much money have we saved, which was the end state or the end goal of the project? Or how much revenue have we generated from this project? Or how much have we improved from a process and a cost perspective? Or are we generating new revenues from our website because we spent $100,000? We've got $400,000 to show for it. So a great way to think about it is actually do benefits management around your project management so you can actually show the value of an investment, not just what you spent. And that's where project management becomes much more strategic, is if you're showing value, not just cost. So, throughout the life cycle, as we mentioned, we are doing reporting, and, project financial information can be reported across in multiple ways using multiple tools. The first of those, and the most basic one, is using Microsoft Project Professional on your desktop when you're running reports. You do it on a one project by one project basis. So I've got a project schedule open, I'm tracking my resources and my work and my costs all in one place. Then I can run reports based off the desktop client. That's one popular way to do it. A more popular way to do it is to use a reporting technology, an analytics tool like Power BI. Become really, really popular. And what we can do with Power BI is pull data from different data sources, build an integrated data model, and support this kind of cross-project program reporting. We can also use it to visualize a lot of that information and put that on top of a data warehouse or a data mart to actually pull data from multiple places and do that analytics and reporting. So Power BI may be a good tool to use. SQL reporting services, which is actually getting rolled now into Power BI, is something called Power BI Premium. This allows you to have a formal database. So it's not just data sources rolling into a data model, it's I actually want a data mart or a database that houses all my project management information that I can then query directly or build information around from a financial perspective, and then I can layer Power BI on top of it. So using SQL and SQL reporting services, we can do some of these things. And finally, there are third-party tools, reporting tools that you may be using in your environment. If it's not a Microsoft tool, maybe something like a Click or a Business Objects or a Cognos or something like that to query the data you have. And finally, there are third-party applications that are out there that actually help you aggregate financial information and schedule information together in one place. So just to kind of give you some examples, if we're looking at, SQL reporting services, that's where you're actually going to be leveraging SQL on an on-premise or an Azure environment to drive paginated reports and very complex reports. From a Microsoft Project Professional perspective, that's where you're going to be leveraging the desktop client to build and manage your reports in an Excel-like interface. Very user-friendly, very easy to get to the data. Everything is a chart or a graph and a table, and it's easy to go in and manipulate that, but you're going project by project. You're not doing this at an enterprise level, but if you're just getting started with PPM or project on the desktop, it's a pretty good way to get started. As we mentioned, Power BI really enables you to put enterprise dashboards in place. It allows you to query data that's in a data mart, a data warehouse, your project management system, your financial system, and create integrated dashboards like the one you see here for a transformation program where you see our budget and our forecast and our actuals. And then you can see the cost to the right of that, spend by project, plan versus actual. So I can see which projects, how far along they are from a spend perspective, and then go down to the bottom left and look how they're doing from a performance perspective as well. So Power BI is a great tool to help you visualize all this information. And there are third-party applications you can layer on top of this that can do things like integrated program and portfolio level, even goal and initiative level and benefits level cost management. You'll see on the chart on the right, we see, other costs that are budgeted versus the actual, how we're spending each unique cost element, or down the gas gauge. What's our budget utilization against where our forecast was? And finally, start to actually make this more like a financial system or a spreadsheet where you're looking at the different cost elements. In this case, we're looking at a table that shows our operating expenses on the project, travel, insurance, direct materials. Then we can see on the right before and then the future state of, budget, plan, and actual. And that data can come from your ERP system or your accounting system or your timesheet system and pull it all in so you have an aggregated look. So use a layer on top of it. Use project for what it's really good at, use your financial system for what it's good at, and then you layer either reporting or an application that has some logic in it on top of this. This has become a really popular approach for a lot of organizations that don't want to go in and customize project online and make it do things it's not designed to do. Likewise, you're not going to be customizing your financial system for this as well. So think kind of reporting and apps as different options. One of the options that's out there that's become real popular is having what we call a PPM data warehouse. What a PPM data warehouse is going to do is going to take data that's naturally stored in your project management system. So in Project Online, you've got project metadata, you've got assignments and work, you've got things like high-level budgets, and then you've got SharePoint content like documents and lists and changes and libraries like that. Marry that up with the schedule information that you're publishing in, which would be your labor forecasts for labor and vendors and software and hardware, and then take information from your ERP system, things like the actual costs on labor that comes from your time tracking system, your vendor, your software, hardware. What we can do is we bring all this together into a PPM data warehouse that brings it together for reporting. And then what we can do is we can layer Power BI on top of that to get our trending and analytics. Again, we don't have to make project management systems and ERP systems do what they're not designed to do. Project management systems in of the nature are fairly flexible and they're great forecasting systems. ERP systems are great on cost management and financial management. Bring that data together in a reporting structure. Some of the real value and benefits of that, you have an integrated data model that's flexible. So as the organization changes, you can change things as well. You keep data where it belongs. You let people work in the tool that they're designed to work in, but then you provide them with a reporting layer on top of it. Project managers work in Project and Project Online. Financial analysts work in the ERP system, bring it together, make it meaningful, and then everybody gets the information they need all the way to the top. And finally, you do establish a level of flexibility around reporting, which is really, really important because requirements are going to change. New requirements are going to be pulled down by the business and maybe audit requirements. You want to be able to change the model without having to modify multiple systems. And by doing that, you can actually update your reporting structure and approach and not have to fundamentally modify each and every system involved in it like you would with integration. So having a data warehouse sitting in the middle, what we call a PPM data warehouse, has become very, very popular. The other option we'll bring up is looking at an application. And so we've actually got an application that's launching in January of this year that is what we call Strategic Portfolio Management app. And what it does is it allows you to plan at different levels. It's going to allow you to plan at a roadmap or an initiative or a portfolio level. So you can look at, as you see on the screen, all the costs at that level for inventory and travel and rent across all of your investments and projects. Look at your budget and your actual plan, see if you're over or under that at an enterprise level, get a financial summary, and also start looking at things like revenue or cost savings all in one place. You're going to be able to trend this out and look at cost by objective to see, what is our CapEx and our OpEx spend, where are we versus where we should have been, spend across our portfolio in a specific roadmap or program. And you're also going to be able to capture more detail about your projects. And this is something we get requests for from clients almost every day. You can kind of tweak Project Online to do some of this, but it's a snapshot at a point in time. And every time you overwrite a number, you don't have the history. With an app like this, you have the history. It's all time phased. So you can see not only your revenue, your resources, your detailed revenue coming in from your ERP system and your project management system. And then you have a history of all of that stuff. So what we're doing is we're working within an application that has this kind of structure. Really, the idea is that you can get down to a level where you've got project detail, portfolio, and program detail all in one system. And this really allows you, by having a specific application to do this, it has a structure built in. So you can manage your costs at different levels. At a detailed level, you start with an activity or an assignment, then you've got resources and projects. But what if I want to manage costs at a product level? What if I'm doing Agile and I've got 10 Agile projects, I've got all these resources, all this spend. How do I aggregate that up and make sure I'm spending the right amount on each of the investments that roll up to a product? Or maybe doing this at a portfolio level, so I can look across the portfolio, or doing it at a program level. I've got a budget for my program. What's my actual spend? What's my forecast? How am I spending? And manage at that level of detail. That's really hard to do just in a project management system and just in a financial system. That's why we have an app that layers on top of this to do it. Maybe you want to track at a strategy level. Maybe my 4-year enterprise strategy for digital transformation is going to be a $40 million budget. What have I spent? What is my actual? What is my plan? Where are my investments? And where am I getting a positive or negative return on those kind of results? As well as at an initiative, or even create roadmaps and visualize the roadmaps and track costs at that level. So, the real value, again, of having a separate app to do this is it's going to support your top level modeling and planning that directors, executives, managers all want. They don't really want to go into a detailed project. They want to think at this higher level roadmap level or the portfolio level. It's going to aggregate data so you can do proper analysis at the right levels of detail and push that down. It's going to separate out your strategy from your execution, let people work in the tools they know, like Microsoft Project. And this is something that if you are interested, we actually are releasing it in January of this coming year, 2022. That's the release date. You can definitely contact us for more details. We've had so much demand, we decided to work and come up with an app for this. So you're thinking about moving towards financial management and managing that on your programs, projects, and initiatives. How do you get started? The first thing, and you'll hear this on pretty much every webinar we deliver, it's all about what are your requirements and what does the business need? What are the issues or problems you're trying to solve for around financial management? What's the impact of not doing this? And what are you losing by not having this data or this fidelity? What results are you looking for from that? And who does it impact in the organization? If you can determine those things, you can drive a really good set of requirements and determine what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. You also need to make a really key decision here. We found this is kind of lacking in a lot of organizations. They'll come and say, we want to do cost management. You say, well, what kind? Are you looking to just track costs on projects and have your project managers manage that? Are you looking to do a strategy level top down on your costs so you can forecast out the future and then trickle that down to projects? Or do you really need a combination of both? That's going to drive what tools you select and how you select them and how you integrate them. So start thinking about strategy, tactics, or both, and what level of detail and what level of maturity you're looking for there. You also want to think about what tools are going to be involved in this that you already have in your enterprise. You may have Microsoft Project or Project Online as your project management system. You may have SAP as your financial system. You may have Power BI or Business Objects or Cognos or something for your reporting tool. And you may have a strategic planning tool as well. Or one of these pieces missing where you want to think about, hey, I really need to add one of these components because it's going to add value to the entire stack. Financial management is very rarely a one system solution. It's most of the time it's multiple systems that work together that give different users what they need, but at the end of the day, you can plan at that macro level, which is what a strategic planning solution can do. You also want to think about cost management as being really a crawl, walk, run, fly approach, that it's really something you're going to be implementing at different phases of your deployment. So as you start with basic project management, maybe you want to do basic role-based costing on different roles. Maybe roll that up to individuals with actual hourly rates at a certain point in time. Maybe start plugging in a forecast over the next 12 to 18 months of future projects in your intake process, or start doing portfolio or goal level planning. Or maybe you want to start doing costs around your Agile projects and start doing high level budgets on resources and different kinds of costs. So it's something that you're going to mature at different stages. You really got to figure out what the requirements are and then think about it really just like resource management. It's a process you're going to continue to mature over and over time so you get better at forecasting, get better at getting your actuals in. And additionally, you always want to partner with organizations that have done this successfully other places. There's so many different nuances to cost management. Companies like ours can show you some of the gotchas, walk you down the road and show you how other organizations have been successful and not so successful with this stuff. So, our goal today was to give you an overview of how you can do cost management in project at different levels, from a tactical all the way to the strategic level and a portfolio level. Hope we provided you with some insight. At this point, I'll hand it back to Sarah, who can open the floor to questions. Sarah?
Great, thanks a lot, Rob. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A chat box where I'll read them aloud. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A chat box. All right, I don't think we have any questions today, so hopefully today's session gave you some ideas as to how the Microsoft technology can help support your needs for managing costs on projects. And if you're interested in digging deeper to determine how the solution can meet your needs, or if you're already using it and looking for ways to drive improvements in the system and related processes, feel free to reach out. We can assist with helping you understand which approach is the best fit, and we'll set up time to ask questions and provide you with guidance and understanding the resources required and make the right technology deployment and training recommendations. So feel free to reach out. My contact information is listed here. Again, thanks so much for joining our webinar today. And feel free to reach out with any questions or specific training or implementation requirements you might have. Again, I'm Sarah Howard with PROJILITY, and we will see you at our next webinar. Have a great day.